And welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Psych Monologues. I am Dr. Ray Mitsch, your host. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to listen to some of the things that I am currently thinking about. Hopefully it will be applicable to your life and the time that you spend not only in your deepening your relationship with Jesus Christ, but also just cultivating your faith and getting a little bit firmer grip on what psychology actually has to offer you. I think in a lot of cases, at least in some circles within the Christian community, psychology is seen as a negative thing or a thing that's antagonistic. And I suppose if you're going to be defining it in terms of what I referred to in the last podcast as big P psychology. In other words, the psychology that is part of a system that has been around for about 110 years or so, that we would refer to as contemporary psychology or modern psychology. It is antagonistic to our faith. But I guess I'm talking more about little p psychology, the stuff that makes us, the way we relate, how we think, how we bring that into our relationship with God himself, really. So what you have tuned into or stumbled upon, whichever it is, or intentionally set time aside to listen to some of the things that I have to share. This is it. Like I mentioned, it's a Psych Monologue. It's a podcast that tries to look at this intersection between faith, psychology, and spiritual formation. And as I mentioned last time, spiritual formation is kind of a fancy word. I think in some cases, in some quarters, when you talk about that, people nod their heads politely and they have no idea what you're talking about. And neither will they ask you about it. But essentially, when I'm talking about spiritual formation, I'm talking about the nature of your development spiritually. And we don't think much about that. I think we do from afar. If you see a little one growing up, and you might think a little bit about his or her spiritual or physical development and cognitive development, like when they first crawl or when they utter their first words or whatever. Those are all kind of mile markers or of development, right? But once we get beyond a certain age, we don't pay much attention to that part of our development with spiritual formation. We think, once I get saved, once I have accepted Christ's lordship over my life and I want to have a deeper relationship with him, it will just go on autopilot and it'll be fine. It'll just keep going, and that's the way it goes. But it won't. I mean, this is the kind of development that we are actually called to participate in, to be active participants in. So that's kind of what I want to talk about and bring to your attention, maybe get you thinking a little bit about it, as to how you can be maybe a little bit more intentional about what you do in your spiritual life, in your spiritual walk. So pull up a chair, get comfortable, relax. Let's talk about the issues that are the most important to you, where you live, what you think, how you feel about living life with others and Jesus, for that matter. I always welcome communication with me directly, whether that's by email or DMing me on Instagram or whatever that may be. I would love to hear from you and hear some of the questions that may be raised as far as some of the topics that come up. So what I want to talk about tonight actually came out of a conversation I had, and it kind of caught my attention. And the question goes this way, is why is integrity so important? I mean, why is it, or is it even important? I think in some respects there's probably a downside to integrity that we don't really think much about. We know that it's a value we are supposed to have, but we don't. I'm not sure we think very deeply about that. we know it's a good thing. I think we've got that nailed down. But I don't think we think very deeply about that or why it's important really at all. And so what I want to do to kind of unpack this a little bit tonight is get some of the basics out of the way so you have a little bit better idea of how I'm defining these terms. And that way we can be on the same page as I walk through some of my thoughts, certainly things that have been accumulated over the course of 40 years in talking to people and even longer time in my spiritual journey and what it's been like. And hopefully it will be encouraging to you. If you go to Merriam-Webster, it's fascinating to me to go to someplace like that because actually it's kind of an unvarnished truth sort of thing. Because like I said, the question that was posed to me it has a certain value to it that seemed to be biased against it. You know, when the question comes up, why is integrity so important? But Merriam-Webster defines it as the quality or state of being complete or undivided. Interestingly enough, just as a side note, when you hear the word shalom, that's actually the definition of shalom. It's to be whole. The other thing it includes, getting back to Merriam-Webster here, the other thing it includes is some kind of adherence to a code of moral or artistic values, usually moral, to be sure. And so what we point to in somebody having integrity is they act consistent with their beliefs. They don't split themselves, which would be disintegration. So how about integration? I'm going to move from integrity to integration. But before I leave that behind, what I want to point to is if you want to get some insight into why integrity is so important, then think more broadly in terms of the terms that we use that have the word INTE, the prefix to it. Because we have integrity, we have an integration, which is what I'm going to talk about here in a sec. But we also have the idea of integer, which is a whole number. And the flip side of that is disintegration. And so the theme that comes out as you talk about the idea of being integrated or to be experiencing a state of integration or having integrity is being wholehearted. And it really, that's what integration is, right? Is about being whole or wholehearted. It's a whole piece of cloth. It's not separated out into little parts, if you will. So my question to you, and I'm getting ahead of the curve, but I'll come back to it when we come to a close, but how integrated would you see yourself being? And how do you get to that even? I mean, what does it take to be integrated? And that's probably a bigger question, really, because to get integrated, the question would be is how did we get here in the first place, right? Because when a baby is born, they're integrated, right? They're a whole piece of human. A strange way to put it. But they're whole. They don't know the difference between them and other people. They have one major kind of character or person in their life, the caregiver, and they're defined entirely by that caregiver. And so the very nature of who we are is when we are born, we're born into a context and we're born into it integrated. So then the question becomes, how did this happen? Because most of us, I think, probably would say in various ways that we see day in and day out as you walk into work in the morning or school or wherever you go, is that the minute you start interacting with people is what you're saying consistent with what you believe. Because we're increasingly in a culture that discourages us from doing that because everything we believe or the things that we say is scrutinized for against some standard, whatever that standard might be. And so at some level, the minute we begin to be disintegrated is the moment we actually start losing our freedom when it comes right down to it. So if we come into the world integrated, and then in the process of growing up and interacting with humans and our families and going to school and learning all sorts of stuff, we get disintegrated, then how do we get back to paradise, so to speak? That idea of being integrated. And quite honestly, just a spoiler alert here, I'm not sure that we ever entirely get back to integration. It's almost like Paradise Lost. It's almost like we're always looking for that, where we can be completely whole in our interaction with somebody else, or even with ourselves for that matter. I'm not sure that we even think about that much. So I'll get to that in a second. I'll talk a little bit about that. I have some ideas that I want to share with you. But before we get into that, I think we have to talk about it. If we understand that being integrated is being whole or wholehearted, that's what Brene Brown refers to it as. Interestingly enough, that term comes up in Scripture in a description of David, that he was wholehearted. He lived out of his integrity. And that's always what it seems to be pointing to. But before we even start thinking about this at all, there are two different things that we have to talk about. First of all, what's the gain? I mean, what do I gain by being integrated? Because ultimately, if there's any motivation for that, then there's got to be, because that's how we operate, right? We operate by what it gets me, what is accomplished by doing this. What's the payoff, if you will? And really, I mean, the proof of integrity is doing something even when there isn't one. But what do you gain? I mean, what do we gain by being integrated? If I want to do this thing, what do I get out of it? And that's a natural thing for all of us to ask. And then secondly, what do we lose by pursuing this integration? I think in a lot of ways, when we start talking about what we lose, it is the motivation for remaining disintegrated. Because in a lot of ways, when you think about it, survival oftentimes seems to require of us being disintegrated. That we can't entirely entrust all of ourselves to another person, or to the degree that I know myself, because ultimately I can't give away what I don't know or I don't own, right? And so what do I gain and what do I lose? Both of those things ultimately seem to have to come together if I'm going to even be remotely interested in doing this thing that I'm talking about tonight. So let me unpack those two things, and then I'll come back to what does it take to be integrated, because I see some pivotal things that can happen in our lives that actually creates a decision point, a fork in the road, where either I go one way or I go another, and the minute I go down one of those forks in the road, one way or the other, I either will become more integrated over time, or I'll become less, or I'll be more entrenched in being that way. Okay? So what do I gain? One thing, interestingly enough, that I'm not sure we'd spend a lot of time thinking about is I gain the ability to actually be known by being integrated or being more integrated. Because like I said, I think we're always hoping for one, but we are acting in a way that interferes with actually becoming that. But I gain the ability to actually be known. And in a way, this is an old computer term. Most people don't even recognize it because, one, I'm a computer nerd and I know this stuff, and I know completely worthless pieces of information that come up in conversation or come up when I'm lecturing. And my students are saying, what the heck are you talking about? Who cares? But this phrase actually comes from the dawn of the personal computer. And the phrase is WYSIWYG. Now, spell it out, WYSIWYG, WYSIWYG. And it actually referred to something that was part of making the personal computer actually accessible to people, which made it personal, of course. And WYSIWYG stands for what you see is what you get. So if I pursue being known and wanting to be known, then the more integrated I become, then what I share with another person is actually who I am and the things that I believe and the things that I know and the things that I feel and everything all at once. And so I'm known as I am to the degree that I know who I am. And again, like I said before, you can't give away what you don't own. So if I don't know who I am, then what do I give away? And a lot of times we find ways to give something away, but a lot of times that something is seemingly the commodity of our trade to be in relationship with somebody else. So I say, well, I'll give you this part of me, and in trade for that part of you, and then we can call this a relationship. And be perfectly happy in it. I'm not trying to make it sound somehow negative. It's the way a lot of people live, ultimately, really. And then some other parts, quote unquote parts, segments, compartments, whatever you want to call it, show, and the person says, wait, I didn't bargain for that particular part of you. So why don't you just keep that out of sight, and we'll just keep going with this little arrangement that we've created of the things that I know to give to you and the things that you know to give to me, and we'll call it good, right? So I can't really be a WYSIWYG person, what you see is what you get, if I haven't explored who I am in the first place. And which really points to what does it take to be integrated. I'll just leave that hanging there for a second before I come back to it. So I gained the ability to be known, okay? Secondly, I gained the ability to be the safe person that most people think they are, really. And safe people are not necessarily just because they can keep a secret, for example. It is part of being a safe person. But a safe person oftentimes is an irritating person, irritating in the sense, let me qualify this quickly, but irritating in the sense that they won't settle. I'll get to it. Hang with me here. They won't settle for only knowing part of you. So they press in on that, which is partly what makes them irritating, right? Because they want to know more, and so they ask questions, and they ask the kind of questions that you actually have to answer. They don't do your question or your answer for you. Because in a lot of cases, that's exactly what we do, and this is part of this little dance that we engage in with one another, is you don't really believe that X, Y, and Z, and then the person just simply can say, well, no, of course not, I don't. Now, they've never owned what they actually believe. Recognize that, okay? But safe people are people that know how to own themselves and have taken the time and the effort to know enough of themselves to own that. And then they move into relationships that encourage us to become all that God created us to be, that encourage our freedom, that encourage our personal power, our personal ability to make choices and that they matter. And they have the ability to be clear about what they're responsible for and what they're not, and actually encourage us to do the same. Safe people are people that recognize when you're carrying something so heavy, emotionally or otherwise, that you need somebody to carry it with you, and they'll do that too. See, safe people are not safe in the sense of keeping me comfortable and happy, but safe people are the kind of people that see more of you in you, and that may scare us, and oftentimes we run away because they do that, or that may be comforting and actually draw us to that person. And I can give you an example from my own life. I met a friend that I've now been friends with for over 30 years, just by accident in the back of a van, and we were on our way to the same hotel in Boulder, and we became fast friends, and we continued to be friends over time. And I can say to you unequivocally that friend, outside of my wife, and my wife has done that as well, and she would probably be the first person that actually created the kind of context that I could fully own myself and come out to be myself. But outside of her, he was that kind of person where he believed that I had much more to me than met the eye. And he was seemingly inherently or innately encouraging and challenging and thoughtful and loyal and faithful and all of those things that I wasn't even remotely that way. And I needed a model of someone to help me do that. And he was that safe person for me. So safe people have a way of, once they begin to take the time to know themselves well enough, they actually tend to create the environment in which it encourages us to do the same. In a safe environment that is saturated with grace. It is not saturated with, well, you shouldn't say it that way, or you shouldn't do this or that or the other thing. That doesn't mean that it's boundaryless, or it doesn't mean that anything goes. It doesn't mean that at all. See, in a lot of cases, when we see some of that stuff, we end up kind of going to an extreme to make our point rather than just seeing the totality of what is actually going on in that moment. Because safe people, one, like I said, have taken the time to know who they are so they can create this environment so other people can do the same. And grace creates that quality that says it's safe for you to be fully who you are without fear of being rejected or ostracized or whatever. And we've got lots of examples through the course of our lives that point to the fact that we're not safe in the world that we're in. So we don't give all of ourselves away, but let alone we don't even bother taking the time to know who we are to give that away. And so you gain the ability to cultivate being the safe person that oftentimes we think we are and we're not, really. And so you also, the third thing I want to highlight is you gain the ability to give yourself and your heart to somebody else. And I've just been saying it like 2 or 3 times already since I started the podcast. You can't give away what you don't own. And so if I don't take the time to know that part of me, and when I say that, knowing, most people will say, if I know that part of me, I know what I'm going to find. And that's exactly why I don't look there, because I've already condemned that part of me. So here we go, right? Because when we start talking about parts, we're already talking about disintegration. And we're already off the path. Because we think in disintegration terms. We don't think in integrity terms. We really don't think that it pays off. It's really worth our while to do that. And in many cases, the one thing I'll point out to you is there probably, if you've ever bumped up against somebody who you marvel at how free they seem to be, sometimes, not always, but sometimes you might actually be seeing somebody who is seeking and pursuing integration in their lives. And so they seem comfortable in their own skin. That's a phrase we use. And they're willing to invite people to know them. But that doesn't mean that they're boundaryless. It doesn't mean they tell their entire life story in the first 10 minutes of meeting us. That's just dumb. And it's boundaryless. But it is being discerning and clear, so that when the time comes appropriately, they've done the work. They've taken the time to wander the landscape of their heart to know what's there, even the parts they've condemned. See, the things that we turn to when we're talking about some of this stuff is just that, right? We go to the parts that if you knew me the way I know me, you wouldn't like me either. So I'm not going to show you that because I know what you're going to think. So it gives you the ability to give yourself away to somebody else. If you so choose, it's not imperative. And ultimately your heart. And when I say heart, I'm not talking about just your emotions. I'm talking about heart in the fullest sense of the word when it comes to Scripture. And that means my dreams and my hopes and my desires and my motivations and my feelings and the things that I mull over in my mind. It's all of those things. So when Proverbs says in Proverbs 4:23, it says, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Out of that comes life, if you guard your heart. Now, it's not guarding an outlaw or criminal. It's guarding something of such immense value that you care for it with care, with intention. Okay, so there are things to be gained here. I'm not sure that the things that I've mentioned are values even amongst many people in our culture today, because we just don't think in these terms. And we honestly, I think for some people, they think it's just an antiquated term. It's anachronistic. It's fallen out of any kind of realistic use. And yet, when you see these people, some of the people that seem to have that freedom and that ability to give themselves away and be safe people and be known, they're heralded. They're held up as a standard of all that's good about humanity. So, what about losing? What do you lose? And see, this is where the compelling argument comes in, right? Because you lose the two things that we desire above all else, and that is safety, security, and certainty. And safety is one of our highest values. It's a natural value to being human. But safety, I'm not talking about being safe in your own home or safe when you walk down the street or you go downtown, or I'm not talking about that kind of safety. I'm talking about emotional safety in relationships. And that safety is the overriding motivation for many of the things that we do in our relationships with other people, right? I'm afraid of being exposed, and then what? And you know, if you want to be a devil's advocate, you can say, all right, well, so what if you're exposed? But I think the honest truth of the matter is that it's not just being exposed, it's that exposure being used against me, and I'll be helpless to do anything to stop it, which is a monumental, mountainous lack of confidence in our ability to respond when somebody has proven themselves to be unsafe. So I lose that ability, and this is part of the reason why. But if I'm going to pursue integration, I think we're pretty convinced that if I do, then I'm going to be exposed, I am going to be ostracized, I'm going to lose my sense of connection, because people will see me as I am and they won't have anything to do with me. And I'm already behind the eight ball when I'm trying to make a case for this, if you will, because one of the things that you lose when you pursue integration is you progressively lose the ability to tolerate dissonance inside of you when your behavior and your beliefs don't match. And in psychology, we literally have that term, right? It's cognitive dissonance, where I believe one thing, but I behave differently. And so there are so many people that I talk to that may have the belief, for example, that they're a simple one, right? That they'll never have sex before marriage. Now, that's changed a lot, because now it's just presumed that any relationship is going to have sex in it of some sort. You name whatever flavor or whatever you do with that. But see, when our behavior and our beliefs don't match, I'll take a more benign one. My belief is that I want to live in the truth and speak the truth. And yet, when I fudge the truth in my talking to somebody else, or in my dealings at work or other things like that, then dissonance arises because I said my belief was that I believe truth is the ultimate value, and that's what I want to function by. But what that means then is if my behavior doesn't match it, then something is more important than truth, really, because our behavior betrays our beliefs. And not the beliefs that we state, articulated beliefs, but they betray our beliefs. So you lose the ability to actually tolerate this dissonance in you. You seek to make sure to have your behavior and your beliefs match. And that's a point of intentionality in your life. So you lose that ability, really, and it's like, well, okay, if that's the case, then count me out. I'll just leave. I don't really have to have integration to survive. I'll be fine without it because nobody else is doing it anyway, so why bother? Here's another one. You lose your commitment to being able to please and keep others happy. Well, that sinks the ship. Because after all, I mean, much of our efforts, and you check it out in any given day that you do have a relationship with somebody, how much of the things that you say or how you say them is to keep them happy, keep them from being disappointed, or keep them from being mad or sad or leaving or whatever. You know, there are a lot of people like I bump into, and it certainly at some point I'm accused of this too. This is a Me Too moment as well. Is that we drop into this tendency to try to people please. That's where a lot of people say that. You know, it's like I'm just a massive people pleaser. Yeah, but what is that about? And it's really, I mean, the interesting thing about that is that people pleasers are actually pretty controlling because they're doing everything they can to create a emotion state in another person that they have no control over at all. But people are more than happy to collude with us in that and collaborate with us. And see, the other thing that we lose the ability to do is compartmentalize our emotions, our thoughts, and our actions, and all these other things, and values, and etc. We kind of lose the ability to compartmentalize that way. So what does that mean? When I have an emotion, I actually feel it when it occurs. And I'm willing to see it and identify it and feel it. And it's like, ooh, I don't know. That's very compelling. And before too long, as I'm listening to myself talk about this stuff, it's like I'm just convincing you not to be, right? Because this is a tall order, really. And there's a concept that I've talked about. Actually, it's going to be the name of a new nonprofit that is being developed. And it's called stained glass. And we end up being stained glass people with one another, so that I create a picture of who I am for you to believe rather than the actual person that I am. Because it's safer for you to see my stained glass than it is for you to see me, even though I long for you to actually see me. So, what's the what's the case here? You know, because when we seek integration, we're actually willing, because I mentioned three things, right? Safety, security, and uncertainty or certainty. So when I seek to cultivate integration in who I am and doing that work, then we're willing to tolerate ambiguity because we don't know everything. We'd be the first people to say, I don't know everything. But I've got to know everything. I mean, when somebody asks why, they want an explanation, right? They want an explanation for why the condition is the way it is. Well, if I explained why it is the way it is, then what's the next step beyond that? Then who do I blame? Maybe I blame myself. But now life is better? There's some certainty in that. But I'm not sure certainty improves our lot very much. I mean, it feels safer for sure, because certainty and safety typically go together, because I know the rules of the road. I know what's coming. I can prepare myself for it, maybe. But if I'm going to cultivate integrity, then I'm willing to tolerate ambiguity in the places of things that I don't know. And when there's ambiguity there, then it challenges me, it motivates me to learn more about it, right? And not just know something. And we're willing to experience that. If I'm going to pursue integration, I'm willing to experience it in the name of sticking to my principles and maintaining my moral compass. And I look around and see a lot of people that are compassless, if there is such a word. As a matter of fact, they've probably taken a hammer to it and just smashed it. Because it's easier to run on my emotions and impulses than it is to actually have a compass and say, so where's north? And let's head in that direction. And it's harder. It's easier just to avoid. If I want to get away from something, it really doesn't matter what direction I go in. But if I know that there is a safe place to go, then the direction really does matter, right? I had the delightful experience over the weekend that I'm coming down from on this Sunday evening of spending a couple of days with my grandsons and my wife up in the mountains. And we got them, we got them little walking sticks. It's kind of cute. And they don't need them, but they think they need them. And the thing that the walking sticks had on the very top embedded in it was a compass. And we began to talk about, so how do you know where you're going? And wherever north is gives you a starting point, and then you can figure out where you are. See, I can't go anywhere if I don't know where I am. And there are a lot of people wandering around without a compass, so they don't know where they are, but they sure are wandering in some direction. Heavens knows what the outcome is going to be. But sticking to our principles and sticking to our moral compass makes us look rigid. So there goes the people-pleasing stuff. Even though I may not be rigid at all, I'm just being clear that there is a standard that is set, and it's worth my while to head in that direction. So the other part of this, of tolerating ambiguity, even uncertainty, in the name of sticking to your principles, is that you're committed to allowing other people the freedom and the personal power to manage their lives for themselves instead of you. One of my grandsons asked me an interesting question. And he, the minute they ask me stuff, it's like, oh, gosh, how am I going to answer this for a 4-year-old? But he asked me this question this morning as we were having breakfast. He said, what's the worst thing that you can say to somebody? And I'm sure, because of the previous conversation he and his brother just had, that he was thinking that I would say, well, that you hate somebody. And of course, I didn't go along with that. I had to have some extra thing to put in here to make it interesting, or at least trigger some questions in his little brain. But I said, I think, I have to think further about this, but I think the worst thing that you could say to somebody is you're worthless. Now, the interesting thing about it, when we get farther into life, we become fully convinced of that, and that's exactly why we build our stained glass. because we don't think that we're worth anything, so we create a picture of something that we believe is worthful or worthy, and let people believe in that rather than what we see internally. Not to mention the fact, and he looked at me and kind of tilted his head and said, "So why?" And I said, "Because you're denying the value of people, that they have dignity and worth just because they exist. And denying that is a pretty awful thing to say to somebody." But see, I think it goes to the very thing that we're talking about here as far as integration is concerned, is that when somebody says something kind, but I don't know if they're saying it just to be nice or if they're saying it to actually be real, then there's a question in my head. And a lot of times I'll just sidestep it entirely, because it's not because I don't believe them. It's because I don't believe me and that I'm worth what they're just saying. And that's unfortunate, because it makes it impossible really to take in things that are said that are nice to us, that compliment us, that build us up and encourage us. But see, I think it goes to that very same thing, is that we don't see ourselves as worthy, so therefore if somebody says something that is talking about our worth, then we deny that and move on and stay stuck in whatever our conclusion is. But that leaves us committed then to creating an image of who we are rather than being real. See, when you deal with integrated people and they say, "I care deeply about you and I am encouraged whenever I'm around you," we know it's real because that's how they live. And they live that way with themselves even. So let me return to one last thing, because I'm going longer than I usually do, but I think this is pretty important. But the question is what does it take to be integrated? And I think based on some of what I've said tonight, you would probably surmise that it would take some measure of self-reflection. And of course, there's a time commitment to take the time to self-reflect. Now, the thing is that we don't think a thing about it in the morning to stumble our way into the bathroom, grumbling about another day, and look in the mirror and reflect on ourselves that way. But we see it as such a big task to go about reflecting on, like I said a minute ago, kind of the landscape of our hearts and what's going on in there, that we don't hardly do anything of that. And so you have somebody that says that they think they're pretty self-aware, and the question is, are you self-aware because it benefits you with the people you're talking to, or are you self-aware because it is a purpose in your mind that if you know yourself well, then it's easier to give yourself to other people that you trust and have found out that they're safe people. So this whole idea of how I go about accomplishing integration, or what does it take to be integrated, I can't think of any condition in which self-reflection isn't part of that. Now, another thing that is equally as important is not only the self-reflection, but inviting information about ourselves from others. Trustworthy, honest people that are also growing as well. Not people that are more than, because they'll do it anyway, right? But are more than happy to tell you, what's good and bad about you, whether by implication or by just directly doing that. But so feedback from people is key, because I can't really know. And I said this to somebody, I don't remember where it was. I may have written it to somebody. But when we get valuable feedback from people, we find out how we're being perceived, not how we think we are presenting ourselves. And see, that's two very different things, how you present yourself and how you're actually perceived. And that gap is filled with incredibly valuable information for us in our growth and our ability to know a little bit more about ourselves. And so being self-reflective, seeking feedback about me, isn't being selfish. It's asking about a topic not to self-aggrandize and build myself up and get more information about how wonderful I am. It's so that I have a better idea on this landscape of what I need to pay attention to. Because if I'm coming across as with biting sarcasm and people really don't appreciate it and they say so, then I best pay attention to that. You see what I mean? And then the last thing, which is not something we necessarily plan, but I think it's our response to crisis in our lives and suffering. Because it's out of that oftentimes you find people growing in their knowledge of themselves and the world and their relationships, because crisis has a way of kind of pulling back the veneer to reveal what's deeply underneath it already, that's been there all along. So you go into any of the furniture stores around here, and if they're a veneer and you pull it off, of course they'll demand that you buy it and take the damaged piece out of their store. But you'll find out that underneath is composite. It's not real wood. It's a composite of something. Versus some stores that actually sell, and they say it, interestingly enough, is they sell integrated wood. In other words, real wood. It's not a composite. It doesn't have a veneer to make it look like it's wood. It's real wood. And that's what points us to what integration is, right? It's the real thing. It's genuine. It's what you see is what you get. And so, what are you focusing on this week? Is it integrity? Is integration something that you think you would like to cultivate in your life? Well, that's great. It's being wholehearted. It's learning how to function as a whole person. And that's not easy because we've had forces from outside, environment and people and et cetera, and inside, waging war against our integration. And understanding what those forces are pointing to and where their point of attack is worth our while in order to shore up our resources, grow strong in those places, and grow from that information. Because that grows us, and then we have more to give away to people. It's not just for me to hoard and then, like I said, just build up this immense image of ourselves as somebody worth knowing. But no, it's building up, if you will, and developing ourselves so that we can fully be known and we actually can fully know one another by doing so. So just some food for thought for the evening. I hope it was interesting and useful to you. If you have any questions at all or anything that I touched on that wasn't clear or you'd want to know more about it, please DM me on Instagram or any place that you can find me. You can email me at dr.mitch@drmitch.com. You can always email me there. I'm happy to write you back as I'm able. The other thing you can do is to subscribe, to follow the podcast or follow developments on the website. The website is drmitch.com, MITSCH. And you can subscribe there, and you'll be notified when things change on the website, or you can follow us on any of the social media platforms. For example, on Instagram, it's at the Psych Monologues. At Facebook, it's ray.mitch, and LinkedIn, it's drmitch. And so you can subscribe there as well. And subscribe or follow us on any of the podcast platforms that you consume your podcasts, Spotify or iTunes or Amazon Music or wherever that might be. You'll find us there. But the thing is that if the stuff I'm talking about interests you and was encouraging to you, something that you thought would be something you have friends that might be able to benefit from it, please send it on and please encourage people to to subscribe and follow us. And if you ever have an opportunity to write a review that just makes the whole podcast and what I'm saying and the things that I'm teaching about just more available to more people. And that's not me trying to be self-aggrandizing like I was talking about earlier, as much as I'm convinced that some of the things I'm talking about are critical to your development. And your development isn't going to just happen. Now, physical development, yes, you're going to grow old whether you want to or not. But with spiritual development, you can, just like your key relationships with other people in your lives, they can grow deeper, they can grow wider, you can be more known, and they can be more known to you. That's the stuff of a coherent and cohesive community of people that we want to be around and we want to be in relationship with. So there's other things on the website that I bring to your attention. We've launched our blog, and so now we're going to be having more blog posts show up there, and that can be checked out on the website. So go back to it and check in now and again. And if you're interested in partnering with the podcast, you can partner with us and continue to grow, because one of the ministries of what we're doing is a silent retreat. We're offering silent retreats right now for students at CCU where I'm teaching. And I'd love to see it be available broader to more students of other universities that would be interested in this kind of spiritual growth. But we need to continue to develop the scholarship fund. And that's not only for students outside of CCU, but also for students who graduated, alumni of CCU, to afford them scholarships to make this possible. Silent retreats are set up in such a way that they cultivate silence and solitude. And that's not something that you see a lot in our everyday lives or even in evangelical Christianity as a value. So you can send your tax-deductible gifts for the silent retreats. You can use our donate button at the bottom of the page on the front page, or you can go to the CCU Silent Retreats to find out more about it and hit the donate button, and you'll be able to get a tax-deductible gift out of supporting our scholarship fund. If you'd rather contribute through check, you can do that as well. Just make checks out to 1615 TV, and then on your envelope, the address is 1615.tv, P.O. Box 1777, Castle Rock, Colorado, 80104. And in the coming weeks, there will be a pretty big announcement, I think, coming that you all might be interested in to know about, because it will solidify part of the vision of a ministry to the next generation of young Christians, that a lot of them are fleeing the church. And they're fleeing the church because of a pretty bad experience, sometimes spiritual abuse, sometimes for a lot of reasons. It's becoming clearer and clearer to me that my calling is to speak to this and be available to speak with this generation, not to them or at them, but to them. And so that's what the podcast was created to accomplish. And so that's there. And if you would like to contribute to become a donor for our scholarship fund, please make that available through the donate button or sending us a check to the address I mentioned. So again, I've gone a little long. There's a lot to unpack and talk about and contemplate when we're talking about integrity and the importance of it. I pray that you have a great week. And as always, love ya. Later. Bye.